that in the past billions were spent and not much impact was noticed.
In the chair, my distinguished colleagues, my name is Muhammad Adamu Aliru. I represent Kebbi Central. Mr. President, before I correct him, let me also make a comment on this appointment. I think this is a very appropriate appointment by Mr. President. He has considered her experience, he has considered her educational background, he has considered her performance, and I think it's a well-deserved appointment, and let me congratulate the nominee. Apart from that, Mr. President, social investment programs have been bedeviled with a lot of controversies in the past. Under the previous administration, it was nothing short of lack of transparency and accountability. Most of us here are living witnesses to what happened. Billions and billions of naira had been spent in order to alleviate poverty. But unfortunately, we have not seen the impact of it, or very little impact have been recorded. And that is why the poverty level in the country continues to rise. And right now, this Senate has approved over 500 billion naira for palliatives. In addition to that, we have also got $800 million from the World Bank. And this office is going to be in charge of distributing this money to the poor and the needy in the society, the poor and the vulnerable group in the society. Mr. President, how sure are we that this money will be distributed equitably and fairly so that the desired objective of reducing poverty in this country will be reduced? I read in a number of journals that Nigeria is the capital of poverty of the world. I'm pained to read this kind of narratives about Nigeria. And quite honestly, we have all it takes really to remove our people out of poverty. The previous administration mentioned that they want to move 100 million people out of poverty within a period of 10 years. I'm not sure we have achieved even 20% of that. But I hope, and I sincerely hope, that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will with the support of the National Assembly and with the appointment of ladies like this, will be able to remove Nigeria out of poverty trap. Mr. President, apart from that, there are complaints, majorly from opposition political parties, that when this money goes to the state, it doesn't go to the opposition parties. And poverty, no bounds, no barrier between APC and PDP, no barrier between Islam, Christianity, or even non-believers. And I sincerely hope that the nominee will do her very best to ensure that all these barriers are eliminated when the money is going to be shared. So I rest my case, Mr. President. I thought we were to have.
But for the nominee, note the first question that came out. Is asking that in the past billions were spent and not much impact was noticed, and that particularly in states where monies were spent through government registers, that the opposition in those states did not have, are you noting it? The opposition in those states did not see anything. It even happened in my own state. So what he's asking now is, what will you do differently to ensure that all Nigerians are carried along, since poverty does not know any boundary. And poverty has no political boundary, no religious boundary, and all that. And so if this money is made available by Mr. President, who is president of all, irrespective of political parties, irrespective of religion, what will you do differently to make sure that this thing reaches those, the vulnerable, that these monies are meant for? I think that's the first major question. Yes, Senator Olarere?
Congratulating the nominee for being found worthy. I'm particularly interested in your CV because you have traversed the length and breadth of this agency, and you seem to have a good grasp of what is happening there. But I just want to support what Senator Alera have just said. A lot of controversy is surrounding this issue of conditional cash transfer. He has mentioned one, I'm not going to repeat that. But there's another confusion. The word vulnerable is being used in so many contexts here, just to plan. But I think it will be necessary for this agency to really define who are the vulnerable people. Because from what we have seen in the past, you just use this vulnerable to plan in the office. When it gets to the field, the real vulnerable people are not the beneficiaries. That is the truth. Because I'm from the rural area, a very village boy. And when this conditional tracker, I don't know how many people in that rural area have access to bank. When you are registering them, you are opening an account for them. I've traveled there so many times, they have no bank account. And what you are saying, those that have no bank account cannot benefit. How do you intend to penetrate the real vulnerable people in the remotest rural areas in our Nigerians so that they can feel the impact of this program? Thank you, Mr. President.
An experienced public servant. She was instrumental in uplifting the life of over 2 million Nigerians when she used her former experience as a banker to digitalize the conditional cash transfer. Mr. President, the nominee, she's a round pig in the round hole, and I believe this responsibility given to her, she will bring to bear with her experience the desired impact that this renewed hope agenda of Mr. President Ahmed Bola Tinubu to vulnerable Nigerians as needed. And let me use this opportunity again to thank and commend Mr. President for identifying with our talent. And I want to assure this honorable chamber and Nigerians, based on our experience and what I go through the activities of humanitarian before now, when I go to the conditional cash transfer, is the only program in that program, is the only department in that program that I was be able to see records. And I stand here before this hollow chamber to tell you, Mr. President, that most of the people I confirmed from my own state, Taraba, the beneficiaries were across board. There is nobody that tell me that when they were given this money, they selected APC and left PDP. So I want to beg this hollow chamber and distinguished colleagues, let's do the needful and give the MD, the nominee of the Mr. President, an opportunity and cooperation to do what she knows how to do best. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anambra Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, the nominee is well experienced, no doubt. I'm very pleased with her profile of service. But from her CV, there was something I saw that agitated my mind. That's why I've been seeking this opportunity. Madam Nominee, you had in your last appointment the duties to deliver 5,000 naira by monthly targeted cash transfer to 2 million homes across 613 local governments in 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. When I saw that, I knew that Nigeria has 774 local governments. So I did a calculation and saw that 161 local governments were not covered in their duties in trying to make this money available to the poor people. I would like to know from you why 161 local governments were not covered. Because it lends credence to what some people had raised as issue here, that this money should be available to all and sundry within the brackets. The money is meant to alleviate their sufferings. You put it on record that you were able to do that in 613 local governments, and 116 local governments were not covered. What was the reason for that? That's my question. And I know that, no doubt, given the opportunity, you have the experience to run a transparent thing. Why were 161 local governments not captured in your previous assignment? Thank you very much.
Victor, I think if you add the 67, not 161, because outside the 774, we have 6 area councils in the FCT that will take the number to 780, because they are also treated as local governments. You understand? So that would mean that she has to explain why she left out 167. Senator Izonaso?
Thank you very much, Madam Nominee. There is no doubt from your CV that you have all it takes to occupy this position. So I think, Mr. President, I've made a good appointment. I congratulate you. In your last assignment, you talk about vulnerable persons. My colleague also mentioned vulnerable persons. But nobody is talking about persons with disability here. Persons with disability, by the 2018 Disability Discrimination and Protection Act, is very emphatic that 5% of employment done in Nigeria, both in the private sector and public sector, 5% of any type of palliative or empowerment should go to persons with disability. If confirmed by this Senate, are you promising us, without reminding you, that the conditional cash transfer that was launched yesterday by Mr. President, which I understand you are going to superintend, are you now promising us that 5% of the 15 million Nigerians, 15 million homes that will benefit from that scheme will be specifically dedicated to persons with disability in line with the Act, setting up the Disability Act in Nigeria? That is my direct question. Thank you.
I have a final question.
Taking cognizance of the inflation effects and, of course, diversion of the funds. These are the risks that are associated with the conditional cash transfers as expressed by Nigerians. But I want to believe, having gone through your CV, that you have what it takes to protect Nigerians and the households that this money are meant for. Kindly share with us, what are those things, what are those strategies, what are those strategies that you think will better protect the households that this money are meant for? And lastly, I want to congratulate you for representing the agenda Very well. Thank you and well done. And Mrs. Alima Sheo, well done.
On why the poverty level in Nigeria has not reduced, despite the fact that a lot of funds have been invested in the social investment programs. I agree with you, distinguished, but I started by saying I commend this great chamber for putting in place a legal and institutional framework which has clearly identified the functions of the national coordinator, the governing body, the stakeholders, which includes you, the state governors, and the House of Reps. The program never had it this good. So I believe this is a step in the right direction. This will make implementation of policies and projects under the agency easy. I would like to let you know that in the 4 programs, in the social investment programs, each target a different kind of group. And I'll start by the conditional cash transfer program. It targets the poorest of the poor in the remotest of locations in the country with a 5,000 naira bi-monthly stipend. This is just for normal consumption. The programs are structured and they have a design, but unfortunately, none of the programs have been taken into their logical conclusion. And it is only when all of these components of the program have been taken to their logical conclusion that we will find the impact in these households. So take, for instance, the conditional cash transfer started with the Abacha restituted funds of $322 million, which was aimed at uplifting only 1 million households. It was in 2018 that the World Bank funds were received, about 500 million naira. And then it was expanded to reach more households. But in all of this, only one component of the conditional cash transfer, which is the base cash given on monthly basis, has been taken to its logical conclusion. The next component, which is supposed to completely uplift these poor and the vulnerables out of poverty, is the human capital development component of the program. So while all the poor and vulnerables that have been enrolled into the program are entitled to 5,000 naira, the next component of the program, it's not for every household. A household has to enroll into a core responsibility before they are entitled to this program, before they are entitled to this grant. That is what we call the top-up. And that is the part that completely alleviates the poor and vulnerable out of poverty. So they have to take a core responsibility like enrolling their children in school, visitation of healthcare centers to reduce maternal and infant mortality. Or you have to engage in nutrition or environmental sanitation. So while House A is receiving 5,000, House B might be receiving 10,000 naira. The next component is the livelihood, still under conditional cash transfer. The livelihood is a one-off grant of 150,000 naira of a household that has keyed into the coaching and mentoring of the skills acquisitions they have been taught. We inspect periodically the kind of businesses they do. And at exit, every household is supposed to spend 3 years on the program and to be exited in 3 years by giving them the one-off livelihood grant. This is to say, you have completely moved out of where we found you. There's a poverty mapping in the country. There's a poverty map that identifies the poor and vulnerable local governments in each state. And that is the map that is being used to target these beneficiaries. That is why it is not in all the 774 local governments. And along the line, the funds were exhausted without even carrying the full core responsibility. Was just piloted in 11 states, and the livelihood has just been piloted in 6 states. In 6 states within the 6 geographical zones. But I'll tell you for a fact that in conditional cash transfer program, in as much as there are criticisms, I know there are gaps, there are challenges. But I would like to tell you that the accountability process of the Abacha restituted funds and the World Bank is being supervised by the Swiss development partners and the World Bank. And we at the office, we don't come in contact with the physical cash, even when we're paying it, except we go to the field. So the disbursement of the cash starts from the CBN, where the account is domiciled, to the payment service providers who are regulated and licensed by the central bank. And disbursement is done by the payment service providers. It is when all disbursements are being made. Even when we became digitized, that I could monitor all that it's happening. They come back, the payment service providers report back to the bank, and a team of reconciliators of all these banks come together to reconcile what has been paid and what has not been unpaid. And the exact unpaid balances are remitted back to the CBN account. This is how transparent the conditional cash transfer is. So it is sad to say this program has not been taken to its logical conclusion. I participated fully in the next borrowing of the NAP scale-up of the 800 million World Bank loan from beginning to the end. It is that funds that was meant to continue on the core responsibilities and the livelihood grant. But it's yet to happen. That is one. Then the Empower does not target the poorest of the poor. It targets graduates and non-graduates. That program is supposed to be for 2 years. It is assumed that by 2 years, this youth have gotten another job, and they will be exited. But as it is today, even the very first ones enrolled have still not been exited. So none of the programs have been taken to its logical conclusion. For the GEEP, the Government Enterprise Empowerment Program. Okay. Okay. It's an interest-free loan that targets small and medium-scale entrepreneurs from 50,000 to 300,000, mostly those that live in the urban area. And that program, in the 4 years that the ministry was created, was just launched in August 2021. And I think we called it like GIB 2.0. Then the homegrown school feeding. The homegrown school feeding targets pupils of public school from primary 1 to primary 3, who are to be fed during school session. So I understand what this distinguished chamber. Thank you.
Me, on behalf of the Senate, to confuse even senators. Because it is the first time I'm hearing that within the program is embedded the one they call livelihood. I don't know whether any of you have heard of it. She just mentioned now that there is one they call livelihood. Livelihood means that you get 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. Then when they are now sure that you are no longer poor, that you have graduated from the 5,000, they now take you into the one they call livelihood. livelihood is 150,000. That's what you said. So the entirety of the program will have to be reviewed because it is too much discretion. We should be ruled by law. The Act of Parliament should be reviewed, in my view, and I'm sure that will be the view of the Senate. Because if we leave too much discretion, even we who are educated and who are in Abuja, we are not aware of the one they call livelihood. We are not even aware that there is one, another one you mentioned, that you can get 300,000. 300,000. There was even a time that nobody knew that there could be a digitalized register. But we were told that it was not good to publish the names of poor people. Otherwise, we'll be stigmatizing them. And then I'm telling them that they are poor. Am I right? But so the more you reveal now, the more I get scared. So I would like you to, amongst the things you will do, tell us what you will do, what your suggestions will be to enable us to make the program more transparent. So that if somebody does not have a bank account in a village, how would the person even know that after collecting the 5,000, that there is another 150,000 coming, when even senators are not aware? How would a person know that there is another one they call 300,000, 350,000 for, what do you call it? Is it a, one-off? How would a person know there is one-off coming? So the entire program seems to have been designed to be complicated, and they have even confused you, the coordinator. So one of the questions I would like to ask is, what would be the suggestions you make based on your experience to enable us to do a program that even we can understand, and then the poor people you are going to can understand? Those who collect 300,000 can understand that it's one-off, and those who are getting 5,000 will know that you come again to turn them into a livelihood enhanced family with 150,000. Outside that, it's not your fault, it's the fault of the law itself. So I think if you just tell us what, you promise us that you will make suggestions on how we can, review the entirety of the act to enable you perform more transparently as you would have loved to.
Thank you, Your Excellency. In charge of all the programs, but at least I know what has been happening there. So what I will do differently, like I said, this distinguished chamber has made the work easy because the work is between the agency and the stakeholders. We're going to be as transparent as possible in carrying out these programs, since we now have a legal framework that we're guided by. We're going to adhere to it strictly. And then all the programs that are going to be under my supervision and coordination will make sure that there is seamless integration and there is free and fair selection across the country for the poorest and the poor, the disabled, and even the senior citizens who fit in this category. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, I believe strongly that even from a shock there, but from what she's saying, it simply means that this Senate must look at, we must go backwards to look at what happened during this, the period she's mentioning, maybe 2001, 2021 or thereabout, because I'm here, the next one is this 300,000 one-off. How did they choose the families that benefited from 300,000 one-off? How did they choose the families that had now qualified for livelihood of 150,000? And these monies were being spent in billions. So we can't saddle you with questions you cannot answer, because you were not the ones who made those choices. But we will, in the course of our oversight functions, and in the course of our slight investigative duties, about looking into the billions that were spent before your time, I think we will answer those questions for the benefit of Nigerians, because Nigerians would like to know how those decisions were made and what qualified some houses to receive 300,000 and what qualified others to have livelihood of 150, and even what made it possible for 16 local governments per state, up to 10 states, to be excluded from the program when they are also Nigerians. Thank you for your contributions. You may take a bow.